who was also choreographer for Angel in an episode. So let's have a nice warm welcome for Melvin Belli. I mean, the piece of the action is a lot of people's favorite Star Trek episode. My wife loves that episode, even though it's really silly, but it's really great to watch. We have two of the members of the crew here, Mr. Delano and Mr. Steve Marlo. And I'm going to put this microphone in front of the audience here on the stand so you guys can ask questions if they ask you questions. So I'll do that while they open up. So gentlemen, go right ahead.
I'm here to get a piece of the action.
Good morning. How many people here is their first time at the show? Welcome to the show. It's my first time too. What a great show to come to.
Any questions? Anything we can answer for you? Yes?
I have a question. Excuse me, I'm very interested in any Gene Roddenberry tidbits that you might have. Did you see him? Did you talk to him?
Just give me a minute here.
Any
I'll walk in
little
front of you.
tidbits?
Okay, it's okay.
The only tidbit I have is I met him on many occasions, and he was always the most gracious man. And he loved the show, and he treated us beautifully. That's my experience with that.
Go ahead.
Age before beauty. I'll tell you something interesting. Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov, has been a friend of mine for many, many years. And I remember the day he got the part in Star Trek, and I said, what the heck is Star Trek? I didn't know what it was. And I never realized that Star Trek was going to become such a great phenomenon as it has been right now. You know. And to quote Milton Berle, does anyone remember Milton Berle? I'm going to quote Milton. I have been to many Star Trek conventions, but this one is the most recent.
Don't remember a whole lot about Roddenberry because it's been a few years since I was on the show. I vaguely remember the interview. I got the job because I had a really good agent, my father. My father said that he got the job because of me, so I'm not going to argue with it. But Gene was very gracious, and a couple times that I met him, and what a great thing to do. It was really a lot of fun. I'm always have been, always will be hooked on sci-fi, and I've watched all the episodes as much as time permitting, and when I can find it on the schedule and stuff. I've watched Star Trek for years, and I love it. So for me, this is just fun. It's great.
I'd rather get up and talk to you because I feel closer to you when I'm not behind the table. Last night, I had a great experience. My two daughters were sitting down there, and I were in the shuttle. We're going to get into the shuttle to go around to different hotels. And it was hot. It was about 8:30. And the shuttle came in. Now the shuttle has 32 seats. And we were 33, 34, 35th. And of course we could get on, but the lady said, come on, get on the shuttle. So we got on the shuttle, and they put us on the floor. And my daughters and I, we didn't care. We were in the air-conditioned shuttle, and we were going to where we wanted to go. So we're down on the floor, and usually in the shuttle, we talk to each other. Where'd you come from? Where'd you come from? And they asked me where I came from. I said, I came from Seattle. And they said, well, what are you doing here in Seattle? I mean, what are you doing here in Nevada? I said, well, I'm doing the Star Trek convention. And I was in one called A Piece of the Action. well, you would not believe the action. The minute I said Star Trek and I was in it, they all laughed and they were joyful. And I thought to myself, my God, just to say Star Trek brought something out of these people. And it brought such wonderful feelings to me, because today in our society, when things are going bad and everybody's out of work or losing their jobs, and they're sitting there, and the minute I say Star Trek, they stop thinking about their troubles, because Star Trek is a wonderful, wonderful program. And it's like a legend. And you should be proud of you people being part of Star Trek and putting on costumes. Because you have no idea what Star Trek means. I mean, you can see it with all you people, who are Star Trek people. But when you're out in the other world, and somebody says Star Trek, and then when they said, I was in a piece of the action, oh, they said, that's my favorite program. Every time I say Star Trek, that's my favorite program. So I was pretty happy about that, and I just wanted to lay it out to you and tell you, just keep it up. Keep coming back. Keep coming back.
Aren't you glad now you didn't shoot Kirk?
Anyway, were any of you at the tables that I went to this morning? No. And I left everybody with a story of hope. This is a true story, to believe in yourself. Many years ago, I was doing a police story, and the three of us, the three leads for the week was Chuck Connors, myself, and this other gentleman. And all during the shooting, this guy kept saying to us, this actor, he kept saying, you know, I wrote a script, and they want to buy it from MGM wants to buy the script, but I won't sell it. And we said, why not? And he said, because I want to play the lead, and they won't let me play the lead. And we said, why? Come on, sell it. He had 2 young children. We said, sell it, $100,000. I won't sell it, I want to play the lead. Well, we worked that entire week, and then we left. About a year later, I was at MGM doing a show, and I walked into the front gate, and I saw this guy. I said, what the heck are you doing here? He said, they're doing my film. I said, that's wonderful. Who's playing the lead? He said, I am. God's honest truth. That gentleman was Sylvester Stallone. True story. The lesson to be learned is he truly believed in himself when he didn't have money, when he didn't have fame. So believe in yourself. It could happen to you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah. There's a mic here.
The question was, what else did I do besides Star Trek? Nothing. I became a lawyer, which is like being an actor every day. So I can't write the script very often, although I've tried on occasions. But it was a wonderful one-off experience. I'm really glad I became a lawyer because that's what my dad did. That's what I was raised as. And the Star Trek episode was just one stop on the Galactic Melvin Belli tour. Some people may not remember the name of Errol Flynn, a man's man, an adventurer, part of the animal. There's never been anybody like him, and there's no one like him today. And my dad used to hang out with him, party with him, and outlasted him by about 40 years. So that's the man I used to hang out with, and this was just one of the many things that we did together. And it was just a wonderful experience. It was a lot of fun. I took a lot of ribbing when I was a kid about it, but over the years I've gotten a lot more admiration from it. I'm sitting in court on, was it Thursday, and I tell the judge, well, we got to get this case settled because I can't show up in court on Monday because I'm going to the Star Trek convention. And he looks at me a little bit and he goes, my son and I are Trekkies. I'll have to go put that episode up. So anyhow, case resolved. And so,
this is a question for all three of you. Do you, any kind of anecdotes that you can remember, stories from when you were working on your respective episodes? I'd be interested.
The one thing that I remember is everyone really seemed to like each other very much. And that made it so much easier. At least in the episode we did, Steve and I together, a piece of the action, everybody seemed to enjoy being on the show. It was one of those, I've been on sets where people didn't like each other, but here people seem to like each other.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. When my agent called me for Star Trek, you know, when an agent calls you and you do the show, it's on TV. It's on TV, and you go to do the show, and you figure, okay, it's done, and you forget about it. But then all of a sudden, you find out that Star Trek is a legend. There's thousands of people who have seen it, and you say, my God, I'm so proud to be just a small part in one episode, and everybody knows that episode. And then when I came in here the other day, when we got off the airplane, and I walked through these halls and I saw all these thousands of people, and walked into that room with all those pictures, I said, my God, wonderful, wonderful. It's got to keep going. It's got to keep growing. And you got to come back and do more conventions, because it really helps people on the outside to get lost in a kind of a fantasy. Because that's why we go to the movies, because we want to forget our troubles and be drifting off into what we see. I think that's the key.
Is Steve telling us that he's in a fantasy world?
We all are.
One of the things I'm very proud of is I worked for many, many years with Sid Caesar. Sid Caesar, I was their straight man, and that's what I did, and I loved it. It was wonderful. And it came about also because of, you have to push yourself. That's why you have to believe in yourself. I had a theater called the Oxford Theater in California. And one day I saw a play that I wanted to produce myself, so I got into it, and we did the play, and it was fairly successful, and somebody came backstage and said, I managed Sid Caesar, he's looking for a straight man, second banana, would you be interested? I went, wow. Again, you have to make your own opportunities. I'm sure Steve did, I'm sure you do as a lawyer. You've got to not promote yourself, but you've got to believe in yourself so that other people believe in you. I am a firm believer in that.
A couple of things I remember about my episode was they had ice cream. And we had lots of ice cream. That's back in the days when ice cream was a little bit harder to get to or something. But I remember all week we were eating ice cream. So they had to get rid of the gallons and gallons of ice cream we had. I liked ice cream as a child. By the end of the week, I didn't like ice cream so much. That was rather interesting. Because I was a little bit smaller then, darker hair, facial hair, probably about 100 pounds less weight. I had braces. Those were miserable to have. But I got my braces off to do the show. That was great for me. Putting them back on wasn't so great. So that was the other thing that I remember. And I always had trouble with my lines. I think that's why they cut them all out. But I can remember them now more so than I could then. So that's what my memories of Star Trek. Plus, you know, just watching the show and being part of history and being part of what a great series it is. And I say it is because it will come back and I'm sure. It's great. I mean, the new Star Trek movie, I was there, and your wife said, we're going to this.
Interesting. He brings up an interesting question. You know, you sit in front of your television set, and you watch us perform, but you have no idea what pressure is until you get in front of that camera. You know, it's so easy to see an actor on the screen and say, my God, it's so easy. You do it so effortlessly. But you go home and you rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and then just before you come on, and there's a big camera sitting there, and all these people in the crew, and you say, all right, rolling. And if you don't know your lines on television, which doesn't have that much money as in a regular movie, you know, then the reputation starts to fall apart. And so you get in front of that camera, and your heart is pounding, and you think, my God, I'll never get through this. But then it happens, and it flows, and you know.
You know, Steve brings up a great point, because I remember do you remember Ironsides with Raymond Burr? I did several of them. I had to learn my lines as all the other actors. Raymond Burr didn't. He'd have his lines, you know, what do you call those? The cards, the video cards. It was so funny because you'd be looking at him talking, and he'd be looking over there. She's looking at his lines. But he was able to do that. He was able to get away with it. So. Don't you have a story about Marlon Brando, who used to put lines on people's heads?
Oh, I worked with Brando in One Eye Jacks. And of course, when we talk about Brando, who was a genius, and I remember I was doing a part in The Buccaneer when they set me over. Marlon had hired Stanley Kubrick to direct One Eye Jacks, and then they got in an argument over the script, and Stanley Kubrick, Marlon, who was producing the picture, decided that he's going to direct it. He's going to direct the movie, and he's going to star it. So now he needs an actor to play his part. And I go over there and finally find out that I'm going to play Marlon's part. Me playing with the greatest American actor of all time. And it was one of the greatest moments in my life to watch this man work. Because he was a genius.
But the thing that I like is I've worked with people who told me they worked with Brando, and he couldn't remember his lines toward the end of his career. And he would go up to somebody and put his lines on their forehead because the camera was on him, and he'd be reading off his lines. I thought that was great. He was still wonderful, even though he did that.
My line of work is a little bit different, so I don't have a big film career. I haven't, acted with some of the famous people that colleagues have. And my job's a little bit different. I don't get to do retakes. I'm going to get it right the first time. And I don't like crowds. So it's tough to get in front of a big audience. It's even tougher to get up in front of a jury of 12 people. Because I've got one shot at it. I better get it right, because at the end of the day, it's my client's future's on the line. So there's as much pressure being a lawyer as there is being an actor. And part of being, I think, a good lawyer is to have a little bit of the acting streak in you. So Dad would do occasionally other things. He did Golden Girls, he did a couple others I can't remember. There were some films that we'd rather forget. One was Ground Zero. That was the worst. I don't think it was even good enough to be a B film. I think it opened one day and closed when the film went dark. He was in a shelter. That was more of a documentary and stuff. But he liked the stage because every day he'd be in court, which is very similar to a stage, except there are no retakes when you're doing, when you're in court.
We've been watching you for 45 years, and those of us who've been going to conventions for 35 years have also been watching you be in the blooper reels. Did you realize that you made the cut and are in the blooper reels?
Yes, I heard.
Were there lots of things like that happened during the filming, or was that?
Not too much, not too much. Sorry, not too much, no. we've all missed lines, and as Steve said, it's not that much fun, because when you have 30 people in the crew looking at you, and cameras and lights and everything, it's a little nerve-wracking. But, you know, you get used to it after a while, and that's why I was in it for so many years. You know.
And the Fizbin scene was just so...
Fizbin, I brought my deck of cards. I did Fizbin for a whole bunch of people at the different tables.
But it's not Tuesday and it's not at night.
It's
not Tuesday and it's not nighttime, so I wouldn't play with you.
Thank you for spending time with us this weekend. It really means a lot to us.
It means a lot to us, too.
Thank you. Melvin, how did your dad get the job? And gentlemen, can you tell us about, I can't remember his name, but Al from...
Vic Tayback.
Vic Tayback. Can you tell us about those folks?
I can only tell you what he told me. He got the job because of me. I doubt that may have been the truth. But that's his version of history.
How was he able to get these roles while he was a lawyer? Did he have an agent?
Well, he had William Morris in Los Angeles back in the day when they were as big as they were. And he was very prominent. He was in the news. He would get interviewed in Playboy, things like that. Because back then, it was a different generation. It was just a different way things were handled. Lawyers did not come out and make public appearances, make spectacles. There were only a couple of lawyers who did it. Dad was one of them. F. Lee Bailey was another one. And they really were on the forefront of, you know, coming out and talking about the law. Because the last thing a lawyer ever wanted to do was either be caught dead in a commercial or something like that. Back then. Now you can't keep them off the TV. I think he got in trouble with the Bar Association for doing an ad for Glenfiddich Scotch. The Bar Association, both the American Bar and the State Bar, was absolutely furious about it. They thought it was unbecoming. And he was doing Glenfiddich, and he promoted Glenfiddich, and there was cross-examination of a Scotch drink. Oh, they raised hell about that. But that was back in the 60s when things were changing. It really took, back then, it took something special to get interviewed, to be in TV, to give interviews and things like that. And he was, you know, a lawyer for the country, kind of a combination of Johnny Cochran, Mark Garagos, Mesereau, and the rest of them kind of rolled into one. And that was, you know, his persona. He was active in Los Angeles. We had an office in Beverly Hills. And he'd been around. He knew a bunch of the actors. And he used to hang out with Errol Flynn. Other people, he had clients like Mae West, who represented John Junker. They worked for a little while. In the police slapping case, thank God. And things like that. He just had a presence in Los Angeles and knew people. And that's kind of, I think, how you get a lot of the work, is you know someone who knows someone that gives you that opportunity that you have to seize.
I want to just mention two people who are unfortunately not here with us, who were wonderful in that episode. Both of them were friends of mine. I'm talking about Vic Tayback, wonderful Vic, and Anthony Caruso, who played my boss, Vic. They were both wonderful, wonderful actors and wonderful people. Vic Tayback owned a string of race horses. He used to call them his little babies, little horses. And God, you know, they're not with us. I hope they're in a better place than we are.
How could they be? We're a Star Trek convention.
I think one thing that we find interesting, you know, we've all played different parts. Well, I think Steve and I. And someone once said, what was the toughest part you ever had to play? Well, it was in the TV version of Planet of the Apes. And my agent called me, and her name was Sue Golden, and she said, Lee, I've got a lead for you on Planet of the Apes. I said, marvelous. The money was good. And I go to the studio. I pick up my part. I go to the studio. And all of a sudden, they say, you've got to come here tomorrow at 5 a.m. or 5:30. I said, why so early? They said, you'll see. I got there at 5:30. And they sat me in a barber's chair, and for the next 1 hour and 45 minutes, they put pieces of latex on my face to make the mask. It wasn't a complete mask. And when my agent came on the set, she didn't even know it was me. And the one thing she said, it's going to be great for your career. Nobody knew it was me. It wasn't me. I don't know how Roddy McDowell and the rest of that crew did it every day, because when they took it off, your skin was raw. It was just terrible. But anyway, that was the only time I had to put on a mask. Anybody else?
Well, you mentioned how difficult it can be with everybody, guys, other than that. Other guest stars have mentioned something, and some of the stars have mentioned when you're working with children and pets, you're at a disadvantage because they're going to take the shot where you may not do so well, but the child or the pet does well. And other guest stars have said the same thing, but not that way. They've said, when you're the guest star, you might do it brilliantly in one take, but they're not going to do that if the star doesn't look that good in that take, and they're not going to care as much about whether you look good in the take that goes on the air, as long as the stars do well in their part. So I wondered if you could comment on that.
Hopefully I was a little bit better behaved than Pat. I wouldn't have an experience on that, because again, I'm not, I didn't, whether or not, if you did a good take, but whether or not you did a good take was that important, because they had to do the child, such as myself back then, or the pet that did the right thing, and they would compromise your take because the kid or the pet got it like that.
I don't know about Steve, but that never bothered me. I just did my work, and if it was approved, that was fine. I've never felt jealous. I've never envied other actors, because when I went in to read for a role, if they wanted Lee Delano, they got me. If they wanted Steve Marlo or anyone else, they would get them. So when they were buying me for the role, they were buying my personality, my experiences.
That's interesting, because you go in there and it's a funny thing about acting. You have to have a certain face to get the part. And you're going to have a certain personality, so when you go up there, you're scared to death, to talk to the casting crew. And am I right for the part? And you go in there and you say, yeah, I feel I am right. And then you're cast. It's simple as that. It's what you look like and what comes across to the casting crew.
First off, I'd just like to thank all of you for being here today. This was my favorite episode. I got my name.
No way.
I went for JoJo. Sit down. If you're as good at doing hits as you are playing Fishman, I'd sit down if I were you.
You want to see a quick raw?
Where's your pen and pad?
You want to see it again?
That was pretty cool. So thank you so much for being here. In the episode, my boss JoJo, he was the South Side territory. Your boss was North Side, but Beppo was never mentioned what territory he was responsible for. Did that at all come up? Obviously, it wasn't in the actual final production, but what is that Beppo in charge of besides saying mother? Beppo was the third boss, but what territory was he responsible for?
He was the territory we gave him.
That sounds good. I'm taking the LSAT in October, so do you have any tips for petitioning attorneys?
Well, all the LSAT does is decide where you're going to go to law school. It doesn't start from getting in or out. If you don't do well, you go to law school wherever you go. Study like heck for your first year, you can transfer to a better school if you were so inclined. But the important thing is not, passing the LSAT, because you really can. It's a great thing.
Don't bring the machine gun.
Can I ask you a simple question? What is it about Star Trek that makes so many people like it? And come to conventions and put on costumes? That fascinates me. Why is it that it's lasted all these years?
Stories.
What love?
The culture.
The stories.
No, it's the future of humanity. It's Gene's vision. It's Gene Roddenberry's vision. When the Enterprise leaves the Earth, it's leaving an Earth that has no war, that has no suffering, that has no money, that has no racism, has none of this crap that's out there. That's what we believe.
Yes,
Right on.
That's what makes it so great.
He put it out there. That's where we're going. We're not going to finish up blowing ourselves up. He showed us where we're going. We're going to have unity consciousness. We're going to be together, and we're going to go out and we're going to even find even more people like that. No, it's the hope and a beautiful world. That's what we come home from a terrible day at work, or we have no job, and we put on Star Trek, and we think, yes, that's how it's going to be. There won't be any racism. There won't be any money. There won't be any nastiness and viciousness. It'll all be peaceful. That's.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, let's have a nice hand
For Steve Marlo, Melvin We're going to get to backstage and then we're going to set up the autograph session. Please do not get online yet. Those of you who are already moving there, please do not get online. If you're online, I'm going to make you sit down.
Thank you, fellas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you pose with a picture with the heat?
Would you?
Yeah. Can you get a picture with him?
Can you go on stage?
No, I mean just with the gun, just with the. Can they? Did you get your picture already?
Can you go up stage on stage?
Can he get on stage with you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, I think he did that already, right? Oh, did you do it already? Get the picture up there, get the head up there, get the guy up there. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, go with it.
Go ahead, go, man, go. Yeah, put it on there. Yeah. Woo!
Excellent. Beautiful.
You look too comfortable holding that gun.
Yeah.